Hello, everybody. Stu Smith here, going live. Going to take some questions today. Sorry for the shift in days, but my week at the beginning was rather busy and could not get to it. So I'm making it up today. My goal today is to take as many questions as I can. I'm somewhat limited in total time, but we'll definitely get as many questions as I can. But before we start, as you guys start coming on, um, I want to discuss a um, a topic that I think is really important that a lot of people don't consider, and that is letting people get in your head and change your mind from certain goals or accomplishments you want to do. And I've seen it happen a lot. And I can even tell you a personal one that it happened to me, where I realized I just didn't want it bad enough to go down that route. And that's really what sometimes negative feedback can do to a person. So when I say you have to really want it, that means you have to really want it to a degree that feedback from people in your circle, and especially the instructors, if you are going through a selection program, you want to be able to not allow that feedback that you are getting, negative feedback you are getting, to be anything other than feedback that you can adjust your performance or adjust how you do something and bring your A game the next time and make it good. And so they're not giving you that negative feedback over and over and over again to a point where your performance is subpar, you're not meeting the standards, and you decide to quit. So, for instance, I see it all the time at SEAL training, and I've seen people go there that are complete studs that have just crushed everything throughout their life. They get there, and all of a sudden, they are not crushing everything. They're average, they're not failing anything either. And then they start getting uncomfortable, being wet and sandy, cold, tired, uh, and to a degree where somebody says something like, "You're the worst student ever," or why are you here? Right? And then it just makes you start asking those questions of why am I doing this? And that's when you really need to have a good answer for that. And my advice is take a big deep breath and change the narrative a little bit. Take that from what am I doing to deserve this feedback? Is it something that I failed to meet a time? Did I not lift enough of the weight? Did I not study hard enough for a test? Whatever the reason, and don't do that again, right? And make it to a point where you can actually, get stronger from this negative feedback and probably not receive that negative feedback anymore once they realize that their negative feedback worked. You're no longer in that category of where they're going to isolate you and give you that kind of feedback. So that's where you want to be versus letting it linger in your head, saying, yeah, maybe I don't belong here. Maybe I didn't prepare enough. All of these little things that can get into your head, um, and cause people who once had a dream of accomplishing something no longer have that dream anymore. The dream is ended just because somebody said something negative to you. It happens all the time. And it typically happens when you're tired, you're wet, you're cold, you're hungry, whatever, and you're not performing very well, whether it is individually or as a team. um, and it can be devastating. So my advice, I've written a couple of articles on the topic of, when your will is tested. And that's one of the ways your will can be tested, just through having to sift through, that feedback loop and taking out the negative and using it constructively to perform better on the other side of it. Uh, Once again, I, I I bring this topic up because I've seen it recently interfere with many people's um, long-term goals, and they realize now that at that moment it was a moment of weakness, that they allowed somebody to get in their head to change the process. And my answer to that was, well, if you can allow somebody to get in your head to do that, you probably didn't want it as bad as you think, because you have to be able to sift through that professionally and perform better to a point where, it's meeting the standards, or even better, exceeding the standards. But anyway, I'm working on that article right now. It's been in my head for a couple of days. I started writing an outline for it, and I'm going to write about it more today, um, and we can probably discuss it a little bit more next week as well. So if you got questions on that topic, let me know. I'm going to go ahead and start answering these. Right, Joe's hooked us up with a list of questions, which we'll get to them. So, in your opinion, do you prefer using scissor kick over breaststroke kick for the CSS? Additionally, which can be more powerful? Good question. I prefer the scissor kick over the breaststroke kick, and here's why. Most non-swimming athletes have developed their leg and hip motion to be front and back. They're running athletes, right? Not many have developed a breaststroke power very much. So a non-swimming athlete typically has a stronger scissor kick. A swimming athlete typically has a stronger breaststroke kick. Yeah, depending on which, event they swim, but most people are like have a better breaststroke kick if they've had a swimming history. If you haven't developed your breaststroke kick, I would suggest the scissor kick. Um, well, here's the thing. The most powerful one is pretty much the one with the most powerful legs. Um, a swimmer with a powerful breaststroke kick is faster than me with a powerful scissor kick. However, I've seen very strong scissor kicks as well, and here's where you see the difference: is the guys who have a good scissor kick, when they put on a big pair of fins. Let's say they're a football player or some kind of strength athlete, they put on a big pair of fins, that are feels like piece of wood on your foot. It's a lot to move through the water. Those big, powerful legs and hips of that power athlete do really well swimming with big fins through currents in open water. So I've seen guys barely pass a 500-yard CSS to get two buds, but when they put on a big pair of scuba fins, they were top 5% of the buds class in the 2 mile ocean swims every week. And those are ones that matter, to be honest with you. And I've seen some swimmers not necessarily do that great with a big pair of fins on because they're used to a breaststroke kick versus a big scissor kick. And these are, they're not small fins, they're big rocket fins or jet fins. But then again, they altered it in some way because they're so great in the water, added some dolphin kicks or something in there. They did more arm pulling than they did leg kicking because they can pull so well. So they can tend to make up and still be in that top 5% of the class, with a big pair of fins on. But, non-swimming athletes with a big set of legs can do real well with a scissor kick as well as a big scissor kick with fins, or constant flutter kicks with fins even. Next question for the CSS. How can we make sure you're not over gliding, or on the flip side, not gliding far enough? Well, there's a fine line between both. And you've heard me talk about my 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi pull. That is usually the average of most people's glide. If you can stay streamlined really, really well, you might be able to get 4 Mississippis in a glide and not lose momentum. But most people lose their speed or momentum by gliding over 3 seconds. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, pull. Pull on three is about the average glide time for most people's kicks, given an average streamlined body position. If you have a horrible streamlined body position, you're not going to be able to even glide 1 or 2 seconds. It's almost like you're probably swimming diagonally almost. So that's my time for either wasting momentum by stroking quicker than 3 seconds, or losing momentum by stroking uh, too long, greater than 3 seconds. So if you read the article Pull, Breathe, Kick, Glide, I'm going to put it in here again. I know I've done it probably a dozen times, but if you read this article, it explain it a little further, as well as show some examples of that activity. Joe, don't be sorry for too many questions. These are great. You mentioned on a previous live stream that BUDS instructors are now testing for students for PEDs. How widespread is this, and is it working? I don't think it's that widespread. I think it has happened in the past. I still think that you're cheating, or if you think you have to use those things, you're probably been told by people who didn't make it, or who are just liars and cheaters. So it's bad enough to where they need to test for it, but I don't think it's as prevalent as most people think. Now, I will say this. I mean, you can't even have supplements at BUDS. So, many of those things you'll get kicked out for supplements. So I don't know what is getting categorized as PEDs or supplements. Are they just regular supplements that you would buy at a GNC store, or are they actually PEDs that are, hormonal driven, testosterone? I don't even know freaking names of PEDs because I don't know anything about them. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. Just don't do it. You know, it's not worth it. All right. Now, Joe, now you're talking rumors. I heard horror stories of students using PEDs and deliberately running clean BUD students out under the boats, obviously. Um, yeah, that is slowly starting to change. Yeah, I never understood that. In my day, BUDS was, if you were under the boat, the boat did one of two things. It either made your team tighter, or you fell apart and you just sucked. There was no, I'm going to help out the instructors by running out people that I don't like in my boat. Um, yeah, that didn't exist. So I'm not sure why that exists now. I don't like it, to be honest with you. But from what I am understanding, is that has gotten a lot better um, in the last few classes. And the way to look at that, just notice the numbers that are graduating Hell Week. Prior to this last class, the numbers were unsustainable. And personally, my term is unsustainably toxic environment. But this last class had, in the 40s that finished Hell Week, which is normal, by the way. It's abnormal when you have single digits graduating Hell Week, unless it's a winter class. Sometimes the winter classes, you have a higher attrition rate. But you know, are do many of those people deserve to be run out? I don't know. You know, I don't know if they're great performers or they just rode them so hard that everybody started breaking, and so you're falling apart. I don't know. I mean, you can tighten down that spigot that nobody graduates if you wanted to. So in the end, it comes down to what are you really looking for the community. So it's a tough one, but it's getting better. I've heard they've made a lot of progress in getting it back to the way it was. Sustainable, like 80% attrition rate. Why do you need 95% attrition rate? Let's just keep it at 80, 75, 80, like it's always been. There's some classes that had 50%, 60% attrition rate. So there you go. Hey, Stu, also on swimming, did you go by videos when learning to swim, or did you need a coach? So are you asking me that? Because in my day, there were no videos of people swimming the combat swimmer stroke. We just learned it, on our own. Luckily, I went to the Naval Academy where there were probably 100 people trying out for SEAL training, and many of them have gone through. I made the videos that you are watching now on CSS, most of them. So, but I've seen many people go on to learn the stroke. Like, put it this way, a lot of people come from out of state to swim in our pool, and I see them swimming. They say, "Hey, this is my first time doing the CSS. I taught it on my own. Can you give me some critiques?" They go right through. They look just like the videos. I'm like, "Dude, you don't need my help." Um, maybe some fine tune, on your streamline, make it a little tighter on your recovery, something minor. But for the most part, they've gotten the sequence of the stroke down. They've gotten the timing of the stroke down, and they're just crushing it. And they they said, "Well, you're the one that taught me how to do this," and because they watch the videos. So yeah, you can definitely self teach, but the way I would do it is, self teach it, and then take a video of you swimming. Somebody walk along the side of the pool, take a video of you swimming 50 meters. That's all I need, and send it to me, and I'll critique it for you and tell you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. Most of the time, I get people who can watch a video and replicate that in their own performance pretty good, maybe some fine tuning. But there's sometimes people I'm like, what videos are you watching? Because this video looks nothing like this video that I send them. I said, these are videos of the combat swimmer stroke. Look at you. I mean, you're doing 10 things wrong, from the timing, your head's up out of the water the whole time. You're kicking backwards, whatever. Um, so do some research, watch some videos, and next thing you're going to be able to crush it on your own. You don't necessarily need a coach, but I'm happy to critique it for you so you can be a better self coach. All right, Kyle. Recently read an article that said the Marine Corps is becoming obsolete. I wonder whose opinion that was. That's interesting. It mentioned how we don't need two land forces. What are your thoughts on that? I think that's insane. And it's Marine Corps, CORPS, not core. Maybe you did voice to text. No, that's in complete insanity. I don't know who would write something like that, but that's just stupid. We definitely need a force because the Marine Corps, the reason why they're here is they're amphibious, right? They come from the sea into the shore. They're going to do a lot of amphibious landings. Yes, the Army can do that too if we needed it on a larger scale, like D-Day. But that's what the Marine Corps does. They're badasses too at it. Just a different branch. Nothing wrong with it. It's probably some political hack making that recommendation. Might have been some former general. Who knows? But it's obviously an opinion, you know. I have a ton of opinions when I do these live Q&As. You know, I have a way of doing things, not the only way of doing things. And I guarantee you that article there, definitely an opinion piece. What are some good running technique cues to work on for more efficiency? Good question. Arm swing, little saying called hip to lip, right? Arm swing should be hips to lips, hips to lips. Um, Heart rate, check out your heart rate whenever you are running to see where you are on what kind of cardio aerobic base you have. Breathing rhythm. I tend to get in a rhythm of breathing like 3 steps inhale, 2 steps exhale. So 3, 2, 3, 2. Seems to work for me. Sometimes when I get a little faster, though, I may need to go 2, 2. 2 inhale, 2 exhale, because I just breathing in faster. Um, let's see. Breathing, arm swing, stride. You don't want to overstride. If you feel like you're overstriding, shorten that stride a little bit. Hit a little more midfoot versus heel. Um, bring your heels up a little bit whenever you are running. So each stride, has a high heel kick, and that tends to help you move a little bit more efficiently. Those are off the top of my head what I tend to look at. Um, make sure you're not crossing your arms when your arm swing is what I meant to say, but kind of keep it in front of you, hip to lip. Don't cross over. Makes yourself almost serpentine when you're running. But yeah, you could read articles on that definitely. Proper running form. Google that. You'll find some good answers to what you're looking for. Let's see. Slade says heading to the Air Force end of the month. PJs, good luck. Feel like I'm ready, but what should I be doing this close to shipping? Well, here's the deal. You're not going to get stronger or faster in your last week or two of training. So just do your normal workouts, maintain, good performances during those workouts. Work on recovering really well, because you want to go into training somewhat recovered, well rested, but not to a point where you're taking 3, 4 days off, right? You don't necessarily need to do that. But you just need to focus on your sleep, your nutrition, your hydration, just recovery in general. That's going to help you more than anything, especially if you are having to take initial fitness test quickly into your training. I know you'll have to take one when you get to prep. I'm not sure if you have to take one during your basic military training program, but if you do, that initial fitness test is usually a make or break test. So the last thing you want to do is fail that and be out of the program, um, or not be eligible for the program. So though failing it is really hard to do. I mean, the standards aren't impossible for sure. But to be a PJ, you definitely want to be in the higher levels of those tests. But yeah, I wouldn't change a whole lot. Basic military training is going to be, or boot camp, we call it in the Navy, is going to be your taper. So go into it normal. Don't overdo it to where you hurt yourself, but don't underdo it to where you're over rested, right? And getting out of shape. So keep your cardio up. Good questions today. Do you know how to substitute workouts throughout the day? Yeah, of course. For example, on days where I can't work out in the morning and want to work out but my body is not used to a night schedule workout. Okay, I see what you're saying. Um, my suggestion is if you have a night schedule work, your work is during the night. My suggestion is work out before your night shift versus after your night shift in the morning, because it's horrible when you try to do that. You just feel like crap. You know, you should just go get some sleep right after your work. Eat some breakfast, go get some sleep. Um, but yeah, anytime we did night ops, we would sleep during the day and check into work in the late afternoon, early evening, and probably 2 hours before we did our night dives or night whatever, um, we worked out. Just it's one way to stay awake. It's a really good way to ramp you up and keep you up a little more alert than you normally are. When it gets to be 10, 11 o'clock at night, we typically start to downshift. And personally, I turn into a walking zombie pretty much. So I always did a workout later that helped me stay awake and alert, well into 2, 3 in the morning. And then, you got to battle it maybe with some caffeine or something like that. But still, that's how I bump everything over. If I'm working out, if I'm working nights, I will work out before that shift. Yeah, most people just email me the videos. Some people DM them to me on Instagram. They can usually handle a minute video on Instagram. So just go, like I said, down and back. And don't just set the camera on the side of the pool because I can't see anything. Just have somebody walk along the pool, turn the camera sideways so I can see your whole body when you're swimming, and make sure you're doing it right. So there you go. Doing CrossFit for the years now. It's got me in great shape. But now I'm trying to meet COPST scores. It doesn't help with lowering run times or obtaining high rep calisthenics with push. Yeah, you know what? If you're trying to focus on a PST, your workout should look like a PST. That means you have pull ups, push ups, sit ups for your upper body days. You can add dips in there or something. Maybe even some dumbbell work, kettlebell work too, but not a whole lot. You want to work on high rep calisthenics, basically like a Murph level workout. Um, and you want to run and you want to swim. I will say this, if you're lifting heavy weights, especially on the legs, it is not helpful for trying to get faster mile times. It's great for getting faster speed and agility times, working that power aspect of lifting. That can help you with 40-meter sprints, for instance. But it's not going to help you with mile pace running. In fact, it almost hinders it. In fact, if you're doing a lot of running mixed with that, you may notice two things: that your lifts aren't very good and your runs aren't very good. So I separate them all together, and I use a system called seasonal tactical fitness periodization, where we lift separately in the fall and winter primarily, and focus on strength and power, speed and agility during those, though we try to maintain moderate cardio and calisthenics during that cycle. But in the spring and summer, we drop the weights most of the time. We'll add in some weights, but most time the focus is endurance, run, swim, ruck endurance, as well as high rep calisthenics, muscle stamina endurance. So that it makes for a better COPST cycle. So if you're looking for cycles, for instance, like my spring training cycle, that's a good one. Let me see what else I have. Spring summer PT cardio cycle. I mean, this is all about muscle stamina and endurance. Then you can go really specific and actually get programs that are specifically guided towards that PST. So, there's multiple options for you. These seasonal ones that I just showed you are a little more all encompassing for any service. Like, for instance, today we're working out. We had guys that want to be SEALs, guys that want to be PJs, guys that want to be Marines, guys that were Marines that want to be FBI agents, or guys that are FBI agents want to be SWAT team guys. So it's a wide variety of skills that we're dealing with, but it's all the same: strength, power, speed, agility, muscle stamina, endurance. It just depends on what you need to do the most. Like all the SEAL guys, they're going to swim after our run and calisthenics workout, whereas the Army guys are probably going to put on a ruck. And instead of leg days with weights, just do leg days with calisthenics. Lots of squats, lots of lunges. Be able to do a quarter-mile lap, a lap around a track of nothing but nonstop walking lunges. And see if you can do that on leg days, a couple days a week, and not be sore for 2 days. That is when your muscle stamina is getting to a point where you're getting muscle stamina, and two, you're getting the ability to recover from that kind of volume without being sore. You're going to be sore for a few weeks doing that, but that's what these workouts are about. You know, in fact, let me put this in here because this is really important, because this is, like I said, this is a way to train. Not the only way to train, obviously. There's CrossFit, there's other types of programs, but this is a way you can take some of those programming ideas and just apply it smarter to your goals. So if your goals are when you say meet Navy SEAL PST scores, you shouldn't have a goal of meeting the PST scores. You should have a goal of crushing whatever those standards are, because they're not going to take you just meeting the PST scores. You need to be above and beyond that standard. And it's just going to help you even more with being a better endurance athlete and muscle stamina athlete, when you're going through selections like that. Yes, you want a foundation of strength. With years of CrossFit, you've probably created a good amount of strength and power. That's not going to go away. Even if you quit working out with weights for a little while so you can focus on this PST, you're still going to have that underlying strength for you to handle logs and boats and rucks and fireman carries and other load bearing activities. That's not what is going to challenge you. What's going to challenge you is pure running, swimming, and high repetition calisthenics. So there you go. Good question. I think I answered your question. I personally, I would get out of lifting if you're really trying to focus on PST. So yeah, I guess I did answer that. Unless you want to show up to your CrossFit workouts and do the Murph, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good full body day calisthenics cardio workout. But do the Murph and then go do something else. Go ruck or go swim for an hour afterwards. So you got to put in the time. I always tell people there's no 30-minute gym routine that's going to get you through a day of spec ops training. You got to put in the time of running, rucking, swimming, doing high rep calisthenics, lifting, especially if lifting is a weakness. You need to assess yourself and look at all the elements of fitness and which one is a strength, which one is a weakness. Strength, power, speed, agility, muscle stamina, cardiovascular endurance, run, swim, ruck modes, and grip. Oh, flexibility, mobility too. That's another one. So take all of those, listen to yourself, assess yourself, and figure out where you need to really focus. If you need to focus on muscle stamina and endurance, I would go with this and stop lifting, right? If you need to focus on lifting, I would go with this, and focus on increasing your strength. especially if you're good at aerobic activity already. Do you believe attention to detail is innate or can it be learned? It can definitely be learned. However, I've seen kids with great attention to detail. Like my wife and son are excellent at attention to detail. They can walk in a room and say, "Where did that go?" It'd be something, a little trinket on a shelf, and they notice it. I'm like, "Damn, how did you do that?" Um, and that's when my son was even a little kid. So I think you can definitely be born with a certain level of, environmental spatial intelligence. Um, but at the same time, it can definitely be learned. I became much better at attention to detail post buds, um, than I was before buds. Just because you start learning to scan for threats and look for little things like exits and in a building, or when you're patrolling, you're looking for cover and concealment, and if you had to make a hasty retreat, which way would you go without subjecting yourself to, fields of fire, things like that. So there's always those little things going on in your mind when you're when you're, training in that world, but they never leave you either. Like if I'm in a restaurant, I scan for threats, I look for exits, and then try to get into some detail too. Like my wife will sometimes say, "Hey, did you notice that painting in in the bathroom?" Right? Or like on the way to the bathroom in that hallway. I'm like, "Yeah, I did. That's really cool." Yeah. So it's just like, what are you taking in and actually noticing? Um, and those are good little ways to do it. You can drill your buddies with it too. That's something we always did. How many people were in that restaurant whenever you went in? How many exits? Where were they? You know, were the tables stuck to the floor? Could you move them for cover? All these little things like that were something that were interesting way to practice. But yeah, it's definitely both. But it's also a perishable skill, so you need to practice it. Keep it in your head. Let's see. What set apart the best team guys you ever had the pleasure of working with? Good question. I tell you what, I mean, they were just all of them were just had something special about them. Whether they were just really intelligent, they were really street smart. Um, they were just great operators and been there, done that. And you could just learn from their experiences. Um, I think the best ones were for me were like the older ones that had been there for 10 years that had no problem with sharing tactical training advice and like try it this way, Smith, instead of this way, right? Or the SOP may have called for this, but in this situation, you may want to take a look and do it this way, which is still a part of the standard operating procedure, but it's just another option for you depending on the environment or the terrain or whatever. Um, so yeah, the guys that were good coaches, I think, were a lot of fun to be around, as well as just you just were in receive mode all the time, right? They were transmitting and you were receiving, right? If you had anything to add to the conversation, it was usually a question, right? Well, how about this? If we were doing it this way, how would you do it? Right? Not something like, this is the way I have always done it all my 6 months of being in the teams and just still shitting Bud Chow. All right. I love that you can say the Murph, and we all know what that means. I would agree, Tom. I think that is a great hero workout of the day that it was largely created by the CrossFit world. Where they name their workouts and they come up with these hero wads, and I think it's people bash on CrossFit. You know, I think CrossFit has done more good than harm for sure. It's gotten a lot of people exercising. It's got people becoming fitness professionals. Um, they made fitness a competition, which I always think is kind of fun. Um, you know, yeah, you might not see the best form in some of those activities, but it is what it is. But the hero wads are definitely probably my favorite thing about what CrossFit has added to fitness world. 4 years of criminal justice will cause one to scam for threats. Yes, I would agree. Yeah, once you start understanding the criminal mind a little more, you definitely will want to um, know how to scam for threats. That, and one thing I found too, that when I did some security consulting after 9/11, um, that a lot of our anti-terrorism uh, containment advice, where it's great for criminal activity as well. So it's almost like you get a 2-for-1 deal. If you think a certain way, you can definitely hash out threats between criminals and terrorists, because really there's not much difference. They're just the different purposes behind them. All right. Um, let's see. I think I've answered all the questions. Um, if you got some more, send them. I will say this: my week. This is my Monday show, so where I talk about my week and preview. And we're back. Last week we did a lift cycle, a lift week, which is our block periodization model in here, spring training, where we're doing 3 weeks of calisthenics cardio, 1 week of strength, and a little bit of a calisthenics and running deload. So, um, the one that asked about CrossFit and lifting or not, that's another option for you, is a block periodization model. In fact, let me put that in the cycle. If you're already in the strength world, my suggestion would try the spring training block periodization model, where you do 3 weeks of calisthenics and cardio on a progressive scale. So each week gets a little bit harder with running, a little bit harder with calisthenics. And then that fourth week is like a calisthenics cardio deload, where you actually lift and you work on maintaining some of those strength numbers. You still run, you still do calisthenics, but at a decreased amount. So you're not progressing. You kind of flat line and maybe even drop a notch. So for instance, last week we were running at, like, 2 weeks ago, we were running about 30 miles. And last week we dipped it down to about 18. And but we added lifts to the workouts, a little more swimming. So we're still getting some cardio, but we just added some non-impact activity cardio to our lifts, a little bit of a reduction in the calisthenics to rest our joints, just enough. And I've been doing that all spring and into summer as well. And that's a good way to compromise, instead of throwing out your lifts for 12 to 16 weeks like I have before, and it works, especially if you really need to focus on calisthenics and cardio. Um, that's just another option for you. So anyway, that's what we're doing. That's what we did last week, and this week is back to calisthenics and cardio. A lot of running this week, a lot of sweating. God, it's been hot as hell and humid. So we ran probably about 4 miles with calisthenics of pull-ups, push-ups, dips, abs. Some dumbbell activity just to kind of round everything out. And then yesterday we hit the hill which is normally about a 6 to 7 mile total distance run, but it's a breakup of hill sprints, timed mile and a half, um, a series of goal pace interval runs mixed with squats and lunges. Today we did, and then swim with fins afterwards. Today we did just a mobility day, which my goal today is just not sweat. So did easy bike, did some stretching, some foam rolling, massaging, did that for an hour, and then we swam, did drown proofing, stuff like that for a half an hour or so, just to work on some pool skills and treading, which also is a great way to loosen up the hips, work on your mobility. Um, then tomorrow's another upper body day, similar to our Monday, probably maybe a 3.5, 4 mile run. Friday's a big event. We're going to do a run, swim, ruck on the beach. Not too many miles accumulated, but this month we're doing Spec Op Triathlon Fridays. So this Friday, next Friday, and the Friday after, we're doing a Spec Ops Triathlon, which is a run, ruck, swim on the beach. And each week gets a little bit harder. So this week it's 2 mile run, 2 mile ruck, 1,000 meter swim. Next week it'll be 3 mile run, 3 mile ruck, 1,500 meter swim. Week after will be 4 mile run, 4 mile ruck, and 2,000 meter swim or yards. So that's our month of August. And then Saturday we're actually running more because we're doing a no course e-course workout where it's about a 6, maybe 7 mile total run. So this week we'll probably get back over 30 miles this week. And but they're just different miles. They're beach miles, they're goal pace miles, they're trail miles, there's obstacle course miles, there's intervals, there's hills. So it's a big variety of ways to run, and on different surfaces too. So we're not all running on concrete, day after day, running on soft ground, turf, trails, um, sand, things like that. So I'd say all in all, if we're probably 20 miles are on ground other than concrete or asphalt. I'd say about a third of it's a little harder surfaced. All right, a few more questions, then I got to bail. Got a 10 o'clock I got to go do. I noticed after reviewing the IFT instructions that during the 2-minute push-up test, you are only allowed to rest in the starting position, the up position. Yes. With that said, would you still recommend 80 to 100 push-ups? I've seen it. You can definitely do it. You don't need to shake out your arms. You don't need to do that. In fact, I did 91 the other day and only rested in the starting position. So it can be done. You just got to work on your muscle stamina. When I swim, I keep my heart rate between 140, 160. When I run, I often go above 200. Damn, dude. What the hell? That's like max heart rate. Insane. That's unsustainable. Are you running too fast is probably my best question for you, because your heart rate should be in that 140, 160 zone for the most part. I mean, you can get up into 180s if you're sprinting, but 200 is an unsustainable heart rate for very long. You might be able to last 10 seconds, with that kind of a heart rate before you start seriously slowing down from whatever speed you started. Yeah, my suggestion would be you're probably are just not in running shape, maybe a little bit better swimming shape, or what a lot of people do when they swim is they just don't put enough effort in, so they're not really working hard in the water. Sometimes if it looks like you're swimming slow motion, if you can swim a 50-second, 50-yard swim with 140 to 160, then yeah, you're doing pretty well with your conditioning. Um, if you're swimming, like, takes you a minute 20 to swim 50 yards, that's too slow. So that's like walking in the water. So I'm not sure, but really how to answer that question, because yes, I would probably say you're either running too fast or you're not in good cardio shape, but I don't really know. Um, if you put some mile times and some uh, 500-yard swim times in there, I might be able to ascertain what's wrong, but this is too vague. Huh. All right. So I got almost 9:50 now. I got a 10 o'clock I got to get ready for. So with that, I'll be back tomorrow, uh, same time, 9 a.m. on Thursday. We'll do some combat swimmer stroke critique. So if you do have some CSS videos you want me to see, I will do one of two things. I will do this anyway. I will email you back my personalized critique of your issues, and or I may, if it's really good or really bad, I'll probably show it on uh, the uh, the show, just to show you what you should be doing if you're doing the CSS, or show some very common errors that people need to address if you're doing them. So if they're horrible, I won't show it, but um, yeah, I would say this is pretty good, Matthew. Your swim time's great. That's perfect. If you can do that, heart rate's not crazy. Running, I don't know what's up with your running, but if you're, hitting a 7-minute mile with a 200 beats per second, there's something wrong with something. I'm not sure what that is. It's either your conditioning, or you're running uphill, or you're starting off as a sprint and you don't know how to pace yourself at 7-minute mile for the first quarter, which is a minute 45. If you find your first quarters like at a minute 15, you're way too fast. You need to slow that thing down. Minute between a minute 30 and a minute 45 is a 6 and 7 minute mile, which is somewhere between a 9 and a 10:30 mile and a half. So I try to get everybody that I'm working with closer to that 6-minute mile pace. So you need to play around with, just like you do your 50-second 50s to get your 8:15. Do the same thing with quarter mile runs at 90-95 seconds to get somewhere between 9 flat and 9:30 pace, and learn that pace, practice that pace, so you're not hitting 200 beats per minute at whatever pace you're doing, because it just doesn't make sense. You must be sprinting somewhere in that run. Maybe it's at the end, maybe it's the beginning, I don't know. But it's a pacing game for sure. All right, folks, I got to go. Until tomorrow, I will be back, and we'll hit a 9 o'clock CSS focus tomorrow. And I'll probably have that article done as well. We can talk a little bit about that while you guys get on the video. But until tomorrow, we will chat again. Have a good one.